what third baseman's available?
Yeah, I don't think you can live with 175 and a 224 on base percentage, which is what Matt Shaw has given you in the month of June.
No, I know. Shaw, I don't think you can either, but I don't want to threaten his development by sending him back again. So I'm torn. And who's the third baseman we're going to get?
Well, there are a few. There are, like for instance, the Suarez, who's been the Cubs killer for the Diamondbacks, said you're concerned. You're very concerned. Which are you over the Cubs?
Concerned. I didn't like the way they were going when the wind was blowing in. They had all those games they were winning by one run, and I'm happy to win the games. 3 out of 4 against Pittsburgh, and swept Colorado, whatever. But they were scoring. They were winning these one-run games, which can come into play later. It can benefit you later. But those hot bats that we saw in the March, April, and May, they're now shut down. And so I know that, Suzuki can have a game here and there, hit 2 home runs, even if defeat, and, PCA, I love watching them play. But you gotta manufacture some runs against teams that matter. You got to have some games against the Cardinals and the Brewers. And losing those 2 out of 3 to Seattle annoyed the hell out of me.
What would you like?
Seattle's okay. Just okay. And they're on the road 3,000 miles from home. You need to win that series.
What would you like to see them do prior to the trade deadline? Is it a bat? Is it a starting pitcher? Is it somebody in the back end of the bullpen?
I think it's a little of both. The bullpen has been so good for about 45 days that I don't want to be short-sighted. They have to be able to have a slump and be allowed to pull out of it too. So I don't want to, be hypercritical of the bullpen, which has been, again, great. But, I don't know if you have a bat. Where do you put it?
A bat?
Are you going to get a third baseman?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, do they need a third baseman in your mind?
He's so good defensively. He's so good. He makes some really tough plays. I like him. I don't know if he's, what can you live with? I don't know the answer to that. That's a tough one. That's why guys get paid a lot of money, general manager and head scout and head of player development, to make those. And what third baseman's available?
Yeah, I don't think you can live with 175 and a 224 on base percentage, which is what Matt Shaw has given you in the month of June.
No, I know. Shaw, I don't think you can either, but I don't want to threaten his development by sending him back again. So I'm torn. And who's the third baseman we're going to get?
Well, there are a few. There are, like for instance, the Suarez, who's been the Cubs killer for the Diamondbacks. ESPN just put out a thing today with Jeff Passan.
I saw that.
Yeah,
look, I'm here in Arizona, and I know Suarez. Yeah, but the Diamondbacks, they just lost one of their best players, their recent Rookie of the Year, and the Diamondbacks are not out of it in their own division. Why should they become sellers? I'll take Suarez. I will. But I'm not so sure the Diamondbacks are sellers.
I would think that would be a deal they would make closer to the trade deadline, not now.
Yeah.
Agreed on that.
What about this? Waddle mentioned this earlier, and I've been looking for it. I finally found it. I know Cardinal fans haven't filled that ballpark like they used to.
They have not.
Right, and Michael, they're still 48-36. They're 10 games over at home. And can you believe this? In the middle of summer with school out, Baseball City, USA, or whatever the best fans in the world, whatever they go by, they had 27,000 for Cubs and Cardinals. That's awful.
I thought I picked up the phone and called a couple of people to say, what is this about? Maybe it was just too damn hot. Although people go to Wrigley and sit on, are there still aluminum bleachers out there in the bleachers? I haven't sat in the bleachers since I was in high school. But I couldn't figure it out. Was it the heat? Was it something else? Maybe, look, I don't know what the economy is like in St. Louis. I don't know what the economic factors are. But that stunned me that there were empty seats in St. Louis. And we get spoiled. Chicago is 10 times bigger in terms of population than St. Louis, maybe more than 10. And so maybe there are just some factors involved that, we shouldn't ignore. So I was stunned by that. But, look, it doesn't make the Cardinals any less a threat. What are they within? 3.5 now? 4.5?
Yeah, 3.5. Them and the Brewers.
So I'm, I don't want to spit in the, in the wind against them.
Yeah.
We got to deal with the Cardinals and Brewers all summer. That always makes me nervous.
I was surprised when you said dog days because we do have the draft tomorrow. And what are you hearing right now? Are you hearing any buzz about what the Bulls could do?
No. I hear, draft names. It doesn't mean anything. Draft names don't mean, this is not like the NBA drafts of, 1960 to 2000. You now have people that you don't know who they are, but it doesn't mean that somebody won't be great. Like, suppose the Bulls had taken Pau Gasol in 2000. I don't know who they took that year. I know the Wizards took Kwame Brown, which was a disaster, as opposed to taking, and they had one, as opposed to taking Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol turned out to be a Hall of Fame basketball player, the anchor of a two-time champion. You didn't know that night. So they're going to be people drafted tomorrow night that we don't know they're going to anchor championship teams. That's just the way it is. This Shai Gilgeous-Alexander draft night, they might have known him if they watched Kentucky basketball or they followed Canadian junior national team. They didn't know. Nobody knew Giannis Antetokounmpo. They didn't. He's a two-time MVP. We know people in the league didn't even know Nikola Vučević because he got drafted in the second round.
Yes.
People in Chicago knew Jalen Brunson, and we still didn't take him.
Yes. Well, how about Modest last year? He's from here, and I don't think any Bulls fans knew who the hell he was. No, and he might be the breakout. Look, from what we saw in March and April last year, I'm hopeful. I really have high hopes that kid may come into the season and say, yeah, I got this. And he may have the skill set for it. Maybe it's our time to get that kid. And then he and Kobe White you keep and you hold on to, and they're at the center of something as you acquire others or draft others. Maybe it's our time to draft, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. From your lips. So we don't know that. Is that Derek Queen? Maybe. I watched him in Maryland. I watched him in Big Ten games. I watched him in Evanston. There's certain times where I look at him play and go, oh, my God, this kid's got it. And then times I watch him like a lot of scouts, and I just go, But isn't that what happens when you're 18? I mean, last year people went crazy over Reed Shepherd. I'm like, why? Why? Maybe he has to be, and Houston held on to him, wouldn't get rid of him. I tell you what, Miami held on to a guy who now scores 27 a game. I didn't see it. And they wouldn't trade him. 26 a game. And you got to really have scouts who can see, who can project, and you got to have development. And those two things are so important. So who cares? I mean, trade up. I mean, why? How do you know? I just want the Bulls to get, look, I kept saying, wait on Patrick Williams. Okay. We waited, the jury's in. Yeah. Guilty. Sorry. So you still got to make the right pick. It's going to take a couple of years. But I don't know who that person is. And I don't watch as much college basketball as I used to. I used to go to, 60, 70 games a year and watch another 50 on television. I don't do that anymore. But also, you got internationals. You've got, suppose this Chinese kid who's 7'2", like nobody knows. Suppose he's the next big thing. You gotta wait. Wait it out, and just because somebody says they traded up doesn't mean a damn thing.
Mike, what about their current roster? Do you expect them to re-sign Giddey, and do you also expect them in some way to make a move like trading Kobe White?
Well, I think it depends a lot, to some degree, what happens tomorrow and other dominoes. Like, suppose somebody calls the Bulls and wants to get the Bulls involved. Like, you have to have these 3 or 4 teams trades now. And suppose some other team wants Giannis, and you got to get involved with sending somebody back to Chicago to make room for and to avoid a team being on the second apron. And what's his name at Golden State becomes involved.
Kuminga?
I'm drawing a blank on
Jonathan
the
Kuminga?
Zero. Kuminga. Suppose Kuminga becomes involved. And suppose somebody wants Vučević, which seems to me to be very possible. I think there are scenarios in which you would. I personally, at this point, would like to keep the rookie. I'd like to keep Josh Giddey. I'd like to keep Kobe White. That's 3. I'd like to keep those 3. If I could get Kuminga for Vučević, I'd like to do it. And that 4-person, could that 4-person nucleus be your 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th best players? I don't know. Maybe somebody would tell me. I asked that question recently. Somebody said, nah, maybe, but you know, where are you going to get your 1 and 2? Well, I'm counting on 1 or 2 being lucky in the draft. Like everybody else, damn it. I'm counting on getting somebody from the draft that you project and develop. That's how you got to get it. And you could get lucky in trade, too. Halliburton, not only did people pass on him, the Bulls, in the draft, they passed on trading for him. And now would you have Halliburton? Yeah, you would.
Yeah, and so that's perfect, because here's the question and the way I'm going to phrase it for you. Say it's the year 2035, and Matthew Wilbon is in the NBA Finals, and he just had a pretty bad strain of his calf. But they're 2 games away from winning the NBA championship in Game 6. He can go, and there may be a chance that he could get through 2 games and win his maybe only title of his career. Or he may tear his Achilles because it's a calf injury, and doctors would say if it was the regular season, he would miss multiple weeks. And he says, Dad, what should I do? What advice would you give?
You can't advise somebody to play. If he wanted to play, if he said, Dad, I'm playing in this, I don't care if I die on the court, I'm saying, amen, I'll be there to pick you up. That's what sports is. It's risk. He could risk tearing his Achilles in an AAU game. Now, if you don't want to play, then I got to say, son, you got to do what you feel is in you. Because if you go out there and you don't want to play, you're not going to be great anyway. Chances are. But if you want to play, I'm going to be sitting as close as I can to run on the court to get to you. I saw at the Olympics in, I don't remember whether it was 88 or 92, I saw a guy crumple to the track to tore up his knee. I think he was British.
Yeah.
And his father walked down to the track, picked his son up, put his son's arm around him, and walked the rest of the race. The greatest thing I've ever seen a father do for his son in competition. The greatest thing. I admire Tyrese Halliburton. He is my single favorite player in the NBA now. Single favorite player. That's what sports is. You risk something every day. Losing, humiliation, embarrassment, injury. You risk it. That's what it is.
Speaking of,
I don't have any time for anybody who's critical of Halliburton. There's a price to pay, and it's steep. But if Matthew came to me and said, Dad, I want to do this, I'm going to say, God bless you. I'm right there for you.
Amen. Mike, I know none of us are doctors, but do you have a theory as to why the Achilles injury has been there has been a rise in those?
Yes, I do. And it has nothing to do with the NBA. It has to do with all these kids playing 80 games a year when they're in the AAU and they play one sport. You know who didn't play one sport? John Elway, who never got hurt. You know, Bo Jackson, you could say they're superhuman athletes. Okay, maybe. Those guys played everything. Michael Jeffrey Jordan played everything. Michael didn't just play basketball, golf, and baseball. He played tennis. He played everything. All the great athletes of yesteryear played everything. We just got through talking about today a guy who played for the Lakers and the Cubs. You know, Chuck Connors did. He played for, they all played everything.
The Rifleman.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge, the Rifleman. Danny Ainge played everything. Those muscles, different muscle groups, tendons, And I've talked to enough doctors. It's not my theory. I don't have the original thought on this. I've talked to doctors who say to me, this is not good. These kids playing 75 of the same game in the same sport only every year. Not good. Jackie Robinson didn't play one sport. He played like 6. Jackie Robinson lettered at UCLA in boxing, basketball, football, and baseball. You're talking about people who didn't have the kind of catastrophic injuries that we're seeing. And Wilt was the NCAA high jump champion. And he was also the greatest volleyball player, Jim Brown. These guys never got hurt. And now you're telling me that all these guys now are superior athletes. Well, damn it, if they're superior athletes, how come everything is torn every week? They're playing one sport exclusively. Adults have killed this. Do I think it's good for my son to be playing the number? They play 5 games in a weekend. When you go to an AAU tournament, and I say, Maddie, I can't make the Friday game. What do you got on Saturday? Well, Dad, I got a game at noon. I got a game at 7. And I take the train over from New York to Philly to watch. And then guess what? Depending on whether they win or lose, they might play a game at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Yes.
5 games. So this is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant said to me, to my face, while I was watching him rehab from something, and he said his theory did not come from himself. It was not Dr. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was one of those guys, like the most curious people I ever met. And he interviewed every single person he ever met, including every physician, every, physiologist. And he was convinced that single sport life was troublesome. And it overworked certain parts of the body, which is then he went to do other stuff, training, because he was convinced these people knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, a lot of
and so that's where, that's kind of where I fall on this.
Yeah, a lot of people think that way.